We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Let's get ready to rumble!
It's a question of taste with you, well, if you've gone sour, you want the world plus everything, but it won't work an hour. And now your questions are kept creeping, and you go buying flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy. I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. So shut your mouth.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the professionals a day earlier than normal, but that's because the lads are in Saudi, ready for the big fight. Stu's been there a couple of days. Mitch has literally just landed, and they've got some lovely ringside seats for the biggest fight in boxing history for the last 25 years. Of course, Tyson Fury against Alexander Usyk. So it's a great opportunity for you guys. Stu, you've already been there a couple of days, and you've took in some football as well.
Yeah, last night I was at the Al Nasser Al Hilal derby. Al Hilal have already won the league. That's who Mitrovic plays for those who remember Mitro. He scored in the 98th minute penalty equaliser from a rather dubious penalty, but they've been unbeaten all season. They have 2 games left against teams that they should easily beat, which will give them a total of 96 points out of a maximum of 102. So to do it in their own the neighbour's backyard was quite good, because Al Nassr scored after about 20 seconds. That's Ronaldo's team, and he was his usual sulking, pouting self, and waving his arms about when he didn't get passed to, but when he mislaid a pass, or as it happened, he missed 5 chances. 3 of them were gilt-edged as well, and it was like, who's he going to blame now? And it was quite funny because the Hilal fans' atmosphere was really good, by the way. The Hilal fans were just cheering Messi, Messi every time Ronaldo made a mistake. So the atmosphere was great. I was fortunate enough to be sitting in amongst players, family, etc., and thoroughly enjoyed it. Traffic was, you do take for granted when you're at St. James how easy it is to get out. You know, people complain, it takes ages, but you get out and everyone disperses to the bars. Here, you've just got to sit in cars and wait and wait and wait. It took us 2 hours to get what should be a 20-minute drive, but it was worth it. It was well worth it. And as Mitchell will see tonight, Riyadh comes alive at night. It's not the stereotypical Arabic city that most people will think. It's very vibrant and very modernised now. So can't wait for the boxing tonight. It is the fight of the century so far. And we're very privileged to have excellent seats, so just got to count the hours down now.
So the big question, Mitch, is: are you going to wear your budgie smuggler and your Newcastle top tonight?
Make sure you can it, missus. No, I'm going to be a bit more sedate than that. I think given where we are, I think I've got to behave myself this evening. But I'm really looking forward to it. The next Stu says, I mean, it's just over a year since I was last in Riyadh, and I can already see changes since I was here last time. So it's going to be exciting to see the city at night again and see the place properly come alive. I cannot believe how many Scousers were on the bloody flight from Dubai into Riyadh that I was on today. And I saw the most unusual thing. this lad was wearing a red and white striped shirt, and I could see he was wearing Newcastle shorts. And I'm thinking, what the heck is that? And he's obviously been outlet shopping while he's been in Dubai, because it was last year's shorts paired with last year's Atletico Madrid shirt, and he had some bizarre pair of bloody green socks on. It was like, dear me, did you get dressed in the dark this morning, son? But yeah, it's been a fun trip so far. I'm really looking forward to it tonight. Really,
Yeah, good stuff. Well, the action started 4 o'clock. The undercard is quite extensive. So if you've bought it on Sky or you're watching on Hooky Box, which I know a lot of people will be, then the action starts at 4. But we will be certainly tuning in our household. Main event starts at 11 o'clock. Okay, on to football. Lots of questions from people which have been some which have been in the inbox since we did the show last Sunday. Some which have just come over the course of the last 48 hours with everything going on. Paul, I'll let you have your question first. He said, Steve, could I ask you and the lads, Stu, Mitch, Steve Hasty, George, whoever, he says, in the light of the alleged assistance from our club owners in conjunction with PIF in assisting the City Council with the refurbishment of the Tyne Bridge, do you think this may be beneficial to any planning permission and any extension or new ground relocation of St James's Park? Cheers, Paul. Paul, thanks for your question. Stu, the way my mindset on this would always be that if you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. I think that's the way it tends to work in all kinds of networks, councils, football clubs, you name it. And if you're obstinate and you're a bit of a nightmare, like Mike Ashley was, then the council are less likely to do you favours. So I'm not sure whether there'll be a particular favour granted for your favour on that score. I don't know enough about it, but what's your thoughts on that question?
It's something that they promised at the start. It wasn't just the club they were buying. They were looking to develop not just the city, but the region. So it'll be interesting now. That for me, it just affirms a commitment when you get stories saying that they're putting money elsewhere. They've got more money you can shake a stick at, so don't worry about that. And the idea is, yes, it's a charm offensive. Yes, I can say it not doing any harm, but regarding the stadium, it's a Grade 2 listed building, and I believe that's out of the council's hands. I don't think the council have the full say on that. And if they do, then it's going to help, isn't it? But for me, it's the PIF, the club trying to align everything. And the government are behind it as well. There was talk of 3 billion worth of investment in the region as well. So they are serious, and this is why I believe the Rubens are on board as well, because when it comes to real estate and buildings, they are the best in the UK, aren't they? Well, they're certainly the wealthiest. So by helping out, yes, it should be a tick in the box, but it always gets painted negatively by certain quarters. What is wrong with investing in a region where you've already invested? And it just gives us as fans hope that one day they'll be able to invest as much in the club, because that's what they really want to do.
Mitch, I think Stu's right, isn't he? He's hit the nail on the head there with that. I mean, they did say they were going to invest heavily in the area, and the Rubens have already done that prior to the takeover.
Some people are acting like it's a surprise. Like, hang on, had you head under a rock for the last 3 years, but you're not paying attention back. It's all been discussed in depth that there was more than just in a football club, and I think it speaks to the bigger picture, the wider picture of the state of UK politics in a region that was historically ignored by London. Really, if you look at Newcastle in particular, we managed to do a lot of that ourselves through sourcing funds from Brussels and the EU, and now that's been taken away from us. So, are we really to be criticised? Somebody comes along and says, we know you need some funding, come on. And yet people want to paint it to a negative connotation and use it, and sort of it becomes again one of these non-stories. And yet it does reflect that they're wanting to work with the council. And yes, there's a degree of quid pro quo in that. Of course there is. There always is. When you're talking about funding and redevelopment, and it's like, well, look, we'll help you with that. Are you going to give us the go ahead on this project? Kind of is how it works, really. But at the same time, nobody should be surprised by it. And in fact, you should be buoyed by the fact that they've followed through with it. that all of the talk about wanting to invest in the region, it being bigger than the football club, wasn't there. It could be the beginning of something potentially huge, you know, for the region, from the Tees to the Scottish border, was always the way that we're talking about, and people still scowl at that, particularly our lovely neighbours down the road, who are forever the two who would vote for Christmas. So it heartens me more than anything else to see that kind of corporation's already established, and it makes me excited for where it could go.
Can I just add to that, Steve? If remember when the takeover first happened, and I mentioned on one of the shows, I can't remember which one it was, that they'd been looking for motor racing tracks, areas to put Grand Prix tracks in the region. And Saudi are very big on this Grand Prix thing. Hence the advert last week with Isaac apparently driving it. Clearly he wasn't, but that was the indication. So it's the wanting to make us a hub, a connection from here to the States, from the middle. When I say here, I mean the Middle East to the States. Stop off, visit glorious Northumberland. This is why all these things are getting done very strategically. So it's not just about visiting St. James's Park, it's about visiting the region as a whole, getting the tourism up, and everyone benefits from that. And I say everyone, even our foes on their side, that there'll be scraps for them to put their hands out for, and for sure they'll put their hands out, and their opinion will change quite dramatically. We're in a position where they're showing how serious they are. And I do believe they are looking for somewhere to do a Grand Prix type circuit, whether that be in Newcastle, in Northumberland, but certainly in the region. And it's something they're very serious on. And for those who are aware what the PIF is for, is to ensure that Saudi Arabia come 2030 isn't reliable solely on the export of oil, and to be sustainable in its own right. So by investing heavily in, it's not just Newcastle, it's other parts of the world that they've done it in, but we seem to get the spotlight, or because we're under the spotlight, we feel like we're the ones with the main focus. It's not just that they want to make sure that things are done right and long term is profitable. They don't mind that. Well, they understand you've got to spend money to make money, and they're willing to spend money but not waste it, and that's the key. So for all intents and purposes, we are the tip of the iceberg of what they want to do for the region. But us as fans, people who live in the region, just about everybody will benefit from it. Once they're allowed to do what they want to do, they'll do it where we're happy, and they'll long to make money from it. And of course, it's very good PR.
I've just seen your seats, lads. The undercard's actually started now. I've flicked on whilst we're doing the show, and Isaac Lowe is in making his Riyadh debut. So boxing has already started. Wow, you're talking about 8 hours before the main event. It tells you the size of the undercard today. Okay, back to the questions. Ian, thanks for resending your question. It says, afternoon, lads. Steve, you asked me to remind me about this from last night. Is Howe now under pressure to win at least a cup next season, Stu?
I wouldn't say he's under pressure to win a cup next season, but he'd be under pressure to achieve. But so will any manager at a top club. And if you look at how teams have set up against us this season, even with injuries, we're seen now as a top club. What we need to do is start acting like one and performing like one on a more consistent basis. So I think Eddie Howe's pressure will come from himself. I'm sure with investment in the summer, he'll believe he'll have a squad capable of challenging on hopefully 4 fronts. And we should be in the mix to win something. And you've got to have a bit of luck to win anything, but the harder the work you work, the luckier you get, and you can't doubt his work ethic. So let's just say, I believe we can win something next year. Is he under pressure to deliver next season? I wouldn't have said no. I wouldn't say yes, he's under pressure to deliver a trophy next season, but certainly a higher league position and go further in the cups. So I think they would see the cups as a bonus rather than something that has to be done. The league position, the exposure to European football, etc., is what it's all about.
What's your thoughts on how being a bit under pressure next season to win a trophy? I mean, this will be, we're coming into the third year of the ownership. Mitch, what's your feelings on how, first of all?
Take you back to the words I mentioned on Amigos, and the word was crossroads. And I think that's where we're headed. We're headed to a time where the club as a whole want everybody now to step up. And there are things within it that I think they will want to see. Perhaps some more ruthlessness. Perhaps an ability to let people go that he would rather keep around, and show that he can bring in and manage higher caliber players with different mindsets. I don't think the pressure will be to win per se. What the pressure will be is to see continued improvement in every aspect, on the pitch and off the pitch. And we definitely have improvements to make. I wouldn't go so far as to say that there's a pressure on them that could lead to somebody else coming through the door. I don't think that's a short-term thing, but I do think, I feel that we're going to be asked by the ownership group to start behaving in a much more different way. It's okay to play the big boys. We've now got to develop a mindset and a mentality like that. There's got to be a ruthlessness. There's got to be There's got to be an ability to not accept second best. And I think that also goes through the fan base. We're going through this very difficult time where some people are frightened to criticise, and then other people are probably going a bit OTT. We don't know where to pitch that because we still haven't adjusted to where we are in the global football world as of yet. And because we've had a bit of a bump, that bump after Christmas really took the wind out of everybody's sails on it. But there's also other things going on with the club, like issues with supporters, like issues with even, let's say, player security. Some of them have been burgled, and making sure that people feel they're in the right environment for them and their family, and everybody's supporting them in the way that they need supported going forward. And I think that's going to take big effort again. We're doing it. They said 5 years. I think that's now a 3-year thing, and we're approaching 3 years because we made so much progress in what Eddie Howe did to keep it up, and then what we did the following season in Champions League. And really, we've done what we've done this season, and I think that we can say yes, injuries are a reason, but not use it necessarily as an excuse. I think that's two things. And I think when it comes to everybody sitting down and reflecting on where we've been, I think there are some very difficult decisions to make going forward. And that's why it feels like a crossroads.
Interesting to hear what Mitch is saying there, Stu. I mean, he's broadened it a little bit there, I guess, with regards to Newcastle United as a football club. Do you think that the Saudis and PIF in particular, who of course are the major shareholders, major owners, are ready to take it to that next step and will be watching ever closely on and off the pitch as to what people are doing?
Sorry, it's just me asked that question. It was like I was the Saudi correspondent.
I can't help it if I sound professional. I'm sorry.
No, they took us back to that podcast I did with Ben Jacobs and Mitch's dad. Remember, George was the referee, and he was at the time, shall we say, anti-Saudi, and he said, "Oh, you need to get this, that, and the other to get into the country." I says, "No, you don't. You turn up the airport with your passport, and that's it." As Mitch found out today, and he didn't know how much changing it was, and He's now changed his rhetoric where he's now the Saudi correspondent for TalkSport, so fair play to him. It's important to get the facts. But anyway, sorry, regarding Saudi and the way the club's changed, for sure, they had a taste, and probably the wrong country to say this, but of some really fine wine. So what they won't do is just sit down and wait for it to be passed around again. They'll want it. They'll want it again, and they'll want it again and again and again. So if you overachieve consistently, that becomes the new level, and the barriers will be pushed. We've already on the playing field broke through this season. No one expects us to achieve what we did last year. What they need to do then now is starting making sure that the trapdoor is bolted so we don't fall back down. And I think in the last half of this season, yes, there's been some really bad results, and I'm still really disappointed with Wednesdays. And I suppose we can talk about another time. They want to be able to build on what we've already achieved, and the least they'll expect would be European football this season and then every other season thereafter. And that's part of the budgets. That's wanted on the field, in the changing room, in the manager's room, in the boardroom, where you can start budgeting for higher expenditure, I suppose, because you know that you're going to get an extra income. But when you've got 7 or 8 teams trying to squeeze into 4 and then take what's left, it becomes more difficult. But if we're in a position where we do get European football tomorrow, which I'm confident we will get, then that's another tick in the box. And next season, with that being the 3rd season, back home you say hump Wednesday because it's the middle of the week. Well, the initial project, as Mitch said, was for 5 years. So this now comes to 3 years. This is the hump. This is the top of it. And that's the lowest they'll want to get going forward. So for everyone concerned on the club's payroll, next season is going to be pivotal, because they're not just going to keep smiling and throwing money at good after bad. They'll want returns for their investment. I don't mean initially like, we'll win the league next year, or we're going to win the FA Cup or whatever, but they want to see continued growth on and off the field. And if the people they're employing don't give them that, they'll employ people who will give them that. And for us as fans, I think that's great. Seriously, from a financial perspective, we couldn't have better owners with the business acumen they have.
Okay, good answer to a good question. Got plenty of stuff coming through from different people. Barry, I've made you a moderator. You've been on the channel since the year dot. I noticed you were calling the girls Rates Angels, so you're now officially an angel, Barry. There you go. Congratulations, you've got your wings. You did, Mitch. You noticed. You obviously, people mentioned in the Norman Collier, it's bearable. You're in a hotel. You're in Saudi, so it's not as bad as it could be, so don't worry about it. Neil Calvert, good afternoon. He says, question for the lads. In Eddie's press conference, he constantly states he would only pick players that are 100% fit. Trippier looked miles off from minute 1 on Wednesday. Is this a contradiction? Stu?
Well, this is a board of contention for me, but you've got to then start thinking who else could he played with. We are on our bare bones of the squad as much as they're doing well of late. We've talked about there was only really 3 midfielders plus the 4th one now with Joe Linton come back with the defence. Tino is out, so what do? You put Kraft right back and risk Shaw, who was in the same position as what Trippier was, coming back from injury and not fully ready for it, or do you play a risky young Alex Murphy at Old Trafford? So I believe he's went with the experience of Trippier, and he had a bad game. I don't think anyone can say any different. But he'll come on for that. I think more concerning for Trippier is that will he be here next season? I genuinely believed he would be. I believe that Eddie Howe and the team had long-term plans for him after his career had finished. But the jungle drums are saying that this may well be his last game for us tomorrow if he plays for us. So it shows that the sentiment, the ruthless, whatever is coming, times are changing, and it's going to be a huge summer for us. So I can understand people being annoyed at Trippier playing, but what were the real alternatives? Do you play Murphy at right back, who was not really a right back, against Garnacho, who, to be fair, didn't have a good game? So Trippier did well enough in that part of his game. It's very easy to criticise, but sometimes we've got to look at the bigger picture. And yes, he was blown out his backside, and yes, he got substituted, but maybe that was the plan all along. go and give us an hour, try and establish a foothold, and then we can replace you with fresher legs. I thought the team selection, in my opinion, was wrong, but I'm not Eddie Howe. I would have started Joe Linton with that 60 minutes, go and knock them about, and then put the fresh legs of Anderson on, who seems to me the best games he's had for Newcastle of late have been as an impact sub anyway. But that's just my thoughts. So we can all look at the game, and I put a Twitter straight away after it, which maybe sometimes you should, sometimes you shouldn't, but the reason I did it is because that's really how I felt. And I felt that was our worst defeat of the season. Not the worst performance, the worst defeat. It was disjointed. They were there for the taking, and I honestly thought that we played the occasion, like the stadium, the history of Man United, rather than playing the team. And I'll debate with anyone who wants a sensible debate. If we played to our strengths, we would have won that game comfortably. And it seems that we froze, and we were like, but this is Old Trafford, it means so much, this will get us European football. And that's the mindset that needs to change, that's the mentality switch that needs to be flicked. And we need to have people who embrace it, who want it, who aren't feared of success. And this is going to take another 2 or 3 windows. We can't do it in the next one. But if we look how this squad has improved over the windows, we are going in the right direction. But I was genuinely frustrated on Thursday, not on Thursday morning, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, not just because of Trippier. There was other people who I felt let the team down and let their colleagues down. And for me, we could have took that game by the scruff of the neck. We could have dictated, and it was if we just sat back and thought, no, we'll outscore these. But it was a disjointed Newcastle United. And where we've been successful is when we've had structure and everyone's played to their roles. It's been a one for all for one attitude, as you mentioned last night, Steve. And it wasn't that. It seemed to be like the football was like a hot potato. And they didn't want it. Let's get rid of it. And I feel sorry for Isaac as much as he's been ill. For him to score, he's got to be passed to. And then he got one glorious chance, which 99 times out of 100 he would have put away. But I'm not going to criticise someone who scored some of the goals he's scored this season. However, we move on from that. Should Trippier have started was the original question. I think it was the right call considering the bodies we had to choose from. But there was other calls that, in my opinion, could have been made differently.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to disagree with you because there isn't a right and wrong answer. The only person who knows the right and wrong answer is Eddie Howe, as you've quite rightly pointed out. And the bottom line is, it's so easy to go onto social media and say Trippier shouldn't have played. He played Manu on side. He's to blame for the way we lost. He wasn't fully fit. I understand Neil Calvert's point, but at the same time, Eddie Howe's he's watching these guys train for the full week. He knows he knows the full extent of Trippier's injury and Fabian Schär's injury. Because for me personally, I would have played Kraft right back. I would have played Schär centre half, alongside Byrne, and I would have played Lewis Hall left back. That would have been my ideal lineup. I would have played Nick Pope in goal if he was fully fit, of course, and I would have played Joe Linton as well. And I think that would have probably got us more of a chance of a result. And I agree with you. I think Anderson as an impact sub would have worked a lot better. But we don't know the situation. We don't know who's fit. We don't know how bad Fabian Schär is. We don't know how bad, how much of a recovery Trippier has made or Joe Linton. We don't know whether Nick Pope is match ready. I mean, there's so many questions that only Eddie Howe knows the answer to and his backroom staff. So unfortunately, there isn't an answer to that question, Neil. Mitch, I'll come to you. It probably ties in a little bit as well, with just selection all the way through the season. He's had to play players who've been injured, hasn't he?
He has, and it also ties in with what I was saying about him before. Eddie Howe's style is he protects his players. I've never known him throw anybody under a bus. Every manager do it except him. And he'll cover people's ass to keep that togetherness. But is that always the right thing to do? I don't know. And again, only he knows that. And his style is also to give answers to even long-winded questions. So you get very little material off him. So again, it leaves a lot of people's heads. It does seem a contradiction for him to come out and say, I'm only going to play people if they're fully fit, and then stick half of them on the bench. Well, 5 minutes, 3 people go down and bring them on. It's a very serious situation with them making that kind of statement and then seeming to do contrary to it. Trippier, by his own admission, I think would say he didn't have the best of games back in. To play minor side the way he did was, well, he's done it another 2 times earlier this season as well, which maybe shows somebody who's worried about his pace being exposed as he's getting older. But maybe this is that time to try and bring him into a slightly different role. Who knows? Yeah, don't know. Was even starting Trippier something to help Trippier show Southgate that he's been available for the Euros? And that's all very well and good, but that's only helping keeping Trippier, not Newcastle United. It's so complicated, and that's part of what's been frustrating. We're all seeing choices. You know, the whole situation, which was only really clarified 2 weeks ago by the player himself, and turns out it was pretty much what Howard said all along. But because nobody had the bottle to grasp the situation by the throat and say, everybody calm the fuck down, this is what's going on, it just allowed so many rumours and question marks over what was going on in the Newcastle United to circulate. That all has to stop. There has to be somebody with whom the stop. And we haven't seen that this season on things like team selection, etc. So, yeah, I think some of that was also my frustration. I was super frustrated. I stayed away from making many a comment, for a little while, because I think what I would have said would have been overly harsh in the old light of day. Frustrated. I was furious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Barry, I've just seen your comment about Mitch. Yeah, he's in a Saudi hotel room, mate, and his internet's not great. It's bearable for us. So if it's bearable for us and we can understand him, then it's good enough for. It should be good enough for you. It's just because he's in a hotel room, mate. So no issue. Alan McKenzie wants to know the morning walk this morning. What was it like? Your photos were on there on Twitter, Stu. Looked good. You got around a bit.
Yeah, it is. Well, it was 41 degrees. So I obviously have to wear a cap to stop the dome burning. But it's dry here. It's in the middle of the country, so there's no water nearby. It's dry wind, so it's walkable. Where I'm staying, it's about 10-minute walk to where Mitch is staying. But there's the main street, Ulia Street. At the top end of that, you've got the Kingdom Tower. That's the picture I put on this morning. The one yesterday was at the bottom end of Ulia Street, which I just thought was a nice picture. I don't even know what it was. It just looked nice. I thought I'd take a picture of that and put it out. No, I've got into the walk and I quite enjoy it. It clears the mind, and it gets us a suntan as well, and shed a few pounds, which is something healthy and something that we could all do with doing, I suppose. So yeah, it's nice, and especially on a Friday morning and Saturday morning. Yeah, it's quiet. Tomorrow morning I'll be at the airport anyway, but the traffic gets really bad in rush hour, so enjoy it.
It's a mild 19 degrees here, but it's nice and sunny in the northeast, so we're all getting a bit of sun. 204 watching on YouTube, which means we've got 160 of you watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Good to see a few new faces in the chat as well. Our subscribers are open every day doing it this way, so we will continue to do this. If you are watching on one of those other formats, please jump onto YouTube. You can comment if you're a subscriber. Just hit the subscribe button. It does help the channel grow. Gareth, new face in the chat. He says, what do people think about Ramsdale? We've had one other comment about that as well from Barry Hogan. He says, lads, loads of stories that we're talking to Ramsdale's agents ahead of a £15 million move. Do you think there's any truth in it? Goalkeeper situation needs to be addressed for me. I think Dubravka has been a good servant of the club. albeit with that little blip that we had when he went to Man United on loan. But other than that, he has been a good servant to us in the barren years of pre takeover, and he stepped up to the cause despite having to concede quite a few goals this season. But Ramsdale, I think that's a great signing if we can get him, and I think it gives Eddie Howe a bit of food for thought if he's got him and Nick Pope competing for number one. But I think if Ramsdale does come in, Stu, if it is a story that has legs, then I think Ramsdale's the number one.
I'm sure Ramsdale wouldn't come unless he had those assurances. He's sat on the bench all season at Arsenal, so why would he come and do it at Newcastle? But for me, there's not much between the two of them, Ramsdale and Pope. And this could be another one of those agents mixing it up. Let's throw Newcastle's name into the hat, and then we'll see what we can get. But at £50 million, then yes, of course, he's definitely worth that sort of money. But Spenny sent us he sends us lots of Photoshop tweets, but one of it was from Ramsdale himself that said, this is news to me. So he wasn't aware of it. So whether, again, at this time of year, we know we're going to get linked with everybody, and sometimes it's not the clubs. Majority of the time it is the agents, and we're going to have to get used to, as we've kept mentioning, that we're going to get linked with players constantly because of who our owners are, because people that will want to spend money. But the good thing is we're getting linked with top players. We're not getting linked with Hamza Chowdhury and hopeful that we can get it over the line. We are going to be linked with top players. Through Paqueta's name, that's been resurfaced again. That's something that's is probably more realistic this year round. But again, he's got this gambling ban hanging over him, so I think you'd have to get that out the way first. But Ramsdale, is he better than Pope? I'm not sure, because if you remember last season when we were saying who should be England number one, we all had our black and white eyes on saying Pope's better. So is Ramsdale better? They both had most of the season out. Ramsdale's probably better with his feet, but as a goalkeeper, I'll back Pope. But there's no doubt we'll need a new goalkeeper this summer, because at least one, probably two, will be leaving. So, of course, we need to stop it out. But Ramsdale wants first-team football. He's good enough to get first-team football. But unless he got guarantees he was going to be our number one, I couldn't see him come to Newcastle. And then what if he did? Then you couldn't blame Pope for wanting to move from there. I'm sure he doesn't want to move, but if that was the case, if he thought he's going to start number two, and he's got his own career to think of as well. That's the crossroads Mitch is talking about.
What's your thoughts on Mitch Ramsdale linked? I mean, Barry, who is in the chat, our new angel this afternoon, he keeps a list for us, and it was up there. Well, it was already up to the 70s. And is this a bit of stuff put out by an agent, do you think, or is this something which you could see happening?
Could be. It is something I could see happening. No, it's a difficult one, because goalkeeper is such a peculiar position in terms of keeping two top-class keepers happy. The only example I can think of where that was done in a way that everybody seemed happy with it was when England had Shilton and Clements.
Yeah.
But that's at an international level. That's something totally different. It's not like American football where you can have a team has two world-class running backs, and they call them 1A and 1B because they rotate them in and out. And everybody knows they're going to be rotated in and out, and they're going to get so many touches of the ball. Whereas goalkeeper is not a place you can play 1A, 1B. Ramsdale's already had that with Raya at Arsenal. I think he's been treated appalling by Arteta, if you ask me. Really. I don't see what he did wrong. And I don't see how much better Raya is than Ramsdale personally. But I think at 15 million English good quality keeper to come in to go head to head with Pope, that would be a very interesting goalkeeping room, and would have to work very hard to keep everybody happy. But that would be another one of these nice problems.
86 players we've been linked with in the last 3 weeks. Unbelievable that. I mean, we're heading towards the 200 mark, I guess, before the end of the transfer window. We will go through that list, Barry, once next week's out of the way. We'll review the season. We might have a chat about that list and see which ones we think are genuine and which ones aren't. Lots of other people suggesting that there are big movements going on with players, also managers. Jody Toomba says that Ben Jacobs has put out today that De Zerbi's leaving Brighton after tomorrow's game, which again it's a bit of a shock. The managerial money go around will start as well. Let's get into another question. This one's from Paul Tweedy on Twitter. He said, what do the lads and yourself think about Kieran Trippier's comment about not going to Australia 3 days after Sunday's game because it's too close to the Euros? Stu, interesting to hear him speak out about that. Again, I took that maybe as a sign that could be Trippier's last game tomorrow, so he's not particularly bothered what he said anymore.
Yeah, well, it suits the narrative that we just touched on, wasn't it? That the pendulum seems to have swung with him to leaving rather than staying. But irrespective of whether he wants to go or not, he's contracted and paid by the club, and if they tell him he's going, he's going. And yes, I understand he wants to play for England, but he's got to have minutes. And I think Mitch said last night, wasn't it? They'll be back before the FA Cup final starts anyway. Of course, they can do without the travelling, but he's been a great leader for us since he walked through the door. And whether his comments were taken out of context or not, I'm sure many of the players aren't happy about the travel. But it has to be done for the club. And the irony is, a lot of them will, if they're on holiday, they'll travel like 10, 12 hours to America, or they'll go to the Maldives or Mauritius or something else. They'll do that because it suits them. They're getting paid well for it, and of course it's not ideal. But I've been listening to a lot of their national stuff as well, and it seems to be all aimed at Newcastle. They're not going there to play against Newcastle reserves, are they? They're playing another Premier League team. But it seems like Tottenham have had a free pass out of it. But Newcastle, because they're funded by Saudi Arabia, they seem to be the ones chasing the money, where Levy and his cohorts are getting little or minimal arrows slung at them. But it's a way of exposing it, and same as Japan. And whether we like it or not, we have to accept it. It's a commercial world now. And the Australasia market is growing in terms of football. In the past, they've been very cricket, Aussie rules, rugby oriented. The soccer, as they call it, is growing. So there's a chance for us to put a footprint on there and gain a lot of support. Same with Japan. We know how crazy they are there. And if we go there on I use the phrase I've used earlier, charm offensive, and embrace the local culture and the country, we'll gain a lot of support, which will again put money through money in the coffers, which is what it's for. Let's not be naive about it. They're going there to make money. They're going to Japan to make money, because if not, they'll be playing in if Eddie Howe had his way, they'll probably be playing in a 4-way tournament on Holy Island. You know what I mean? And that's it. There wouldn't be. That's furthest to go. But we'll leave the small tournaments to Sunderland, and we'll compete around the world globally. It's part of how it is. Unfortunately, we want the success. This is part of it.
Yeah, God, the Isle of Man tournament, we used to play in that, didn't we? Remember that? That was the back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, Mitch. I mean, the trip away to Australia it comes straight after the game tomorrow. They're literally getting on a plane and flying straight off there, and I think there'll be TV coverage of it. I think we'll get a chance to see it. But it's if you're contracted, you're part of it. And I've spent the last 2 years doing those with the days with your dad, and we've always done friendlies at a bizarre time, and usually we'll play friendlies at the end of the season. Usually it's a testimonial game for somebody, but commercial trips make sense because it brings new support around the world.
And I think there's more to it. There's more about links to the A-League and more about links to other clubs in the A-League, perhaps on the table, and as part of the globalisation of the game. And let's be honest, they're doing it in a very nice aircraft, in very conditions. It's not like they're getting on a packet steamer with convicts in the bloody in the hold. It's and they'll be tucked up in their bed with that cocoa in time for the FA Cup the final to kick off. You know, it to me, it's the distance that got everybody scratching their head. I get it, but those distances seem ever shorter these days. And with regards to the pre-season trip to Japan, the one thing I don't wonder is there a way to capitalise that on by being linked with Japanese players? If you remember Nakata, the Japanese superstar who signed for Roma, because of the cost of replica shirts in Japan, I believe they had paid most of his transfer fee through replica shirt sales. And those kind of things happen in Japan a lot. They love their merch. And to looking east instead of west from this part of the world makes just as much sense.
Okay, lots of questions coming in. We're going to have a quick break, as always. If you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, jump onto YouTube now. Give us a sub. We will be back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract, free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Thanks to United Group Travel. There are no strangers in our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Thanks to Media Arts for the technical side of things. And you can also find us as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. You can subscribe to the channel by hitting the subscribe button underneath this video. Hit the all notifications bell so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumb up to like the channel and click share to your social media. If you want to join the channel, then click join for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become a member for a one-off £25 payment, email john@nufcmatters.com or go to membership at the website nufcmatters.com. If you've got a smartphone, hold your camera over the QR code and it'll take you straight there. We also help the food bank on this channel. Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk to the matchday bucket and you can leave a virtual donation today. And don't forget, the end of season party takes place 20th of July. nufcmatters.com or newcastlelegends.com is the place to get your tickets. Supermac and Gibbo will be live. Ask George will be live, as will the Long Sands doing an acoustic set. All proceeds on the night going to Dementia Matters, the charity based in Newcastle. And every single penny is going to the charity. Going to be a cracking night. That get your tickets now. If you can't make it and you just want to make a donation, buy a ticket anyway. And as I say, that will help go to a wonderful, wonderful cause. And we've also got an evening with Rob Lee, Friday the 2nd of August. And that is with John Gibson. Tickets are available from ticketmaster.co.uk or from Voucher for that one. A little bit further afield, an evening with the entertainers, Friday the 24th of January. Tickets on sale now, 0844 249 1000 or from the Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. All right, back to the questions. And T-Tank was asking about the ring walk earlier on. I think it's still 11 o'clock. I haven't heard that it's been put back. They're still posting that on the on Sky at the moment as 11 o'clock ring walk. So we'll wait and see. A lot of it depends, I guess, on the length of fights and how long they take. And Lo Amadi has gone to its 9th round. It's scheduled for 10. Been a proper barnstormer this for the first one. It usually is when they have these opening fights, but been a cracking fight. And yeah, I would say that Lowe's probably got this on points from what I've been able to see. But yeah, 11 o'clock is the ring walk. That's what we've heard. Phil Sharp asked a question earlier. He says, you think there is any truth in Wilson falling out with Eddie and Isaac last Friday? How said tight hamstring was the problem the other day. It was illness. Something's off. Phil, it's an interesting question. I think it's one we've all wanted an answer to be perfectly honest. It's certainly one that I've been talking about with my mates over the course of the last week, especially when, there's a club event. I managed to get my second invite of the season to an online club event. I did the Nick Pope and Shea Given one. I was invited to the Shola Amiobi Callum Wilson one. It was rescheduled, which I understood because obviously that tied in with the Wilson being ill remark. But then it was rescheduled and Shola turned up and nobody else did, which I've got to be perfectly honest, right, with a club. There's a 25-man squad. And if you know that Wilson isn't going to do it for whatever reason, you should have got another person on. You should have got Alexander Isak on. You should have got somebody to come and do it. One of the local lads would have done it. I'm sure. I get it. Shola's a striker, so you probably want another striker to do it. But get Alexander Isak to do it. He's got a good talker. Or get some kind of message from Callum Wilson to say, apologies that I can't make it. It's just one of them things. But don't just not explain why he's not on and just leave it to the poor guy who was doing the interview. I think that was wrong, and I think they should learn from that certainly. But there are lots of rumours flying around, and I guess Stu, it's not a question we can answer. We can't say yes, there's definitely truth in it. We don't know, but we can use our own intuition and mindset. We've seen many of these kind of things go on before. It certainly didn't feel like an illness to me, Stu. But we can't say for definite.
Unless Sutton's professionals have said if he is injured, because what we try to do on here is not speculate negatively.
100%.
Especially at this time of season and stuff like that. It's important that unless we've got something confirmed, and Mitchell vouchers, yourself, Will, Steve, there's things that we've been told that we haven't said. For one, it might expose the sources that we've got it from. Sorry, which is a board. It's a long time ago yet, it's a rig walk in 6 hours, 7 hours.
He's on the water, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. I call this when I come here, I don't say I'm going to rehab, I say I'm going to rehab. Yes, there was a rumour that Wilson found out on Friday he wasn't going to be starting and he spat his dummy out. That could have had an effect, but it's all speculation here saying this, that, the chances are he is injured. Regarding him not turning up for that event, he's not the first and he won't be the last player who's feeling sorry for himself or has a higher opinion of himself than what others have, and sometimes neglects the fans, forgets that these are the people who are actually putting money in his pocket to go and spend it on whatever or whoever, shall we say, if we listen to other rumours. So it's the club, again, going back to Mitch's phrase of the week, crossroads, it's at a stage where they're going to have to start being more professional. They're going to have to start, as we said, acting like the people that want to become, and not sitting in the past, like clinging on to the old era, clinging on to, well, I got a job because I know him. It's everyone now who's employed by this club going forward should be there on merit. And if we're all talking about on the pitch, that's our priority, is on the pitch. Off the pitch, it's clear it needs a shake-up, and I'm sure it will. And I think that'll happen sooner rather than later. But Callum Wilson, he could turn up tomorrow, come off the bench, score a goal that gets us a European qualification, and all of a sudden he's a hero again. That's how vain we are as football followers. That's how vain they are as football players. So yeah, it wasn't ideal, and it wasn't handled well at all by the club. But what can we do? Ultimately, Callum Wilson will do what he believes is best for Callum Wilson. And if he's not going to be that team player, maybe he's thinking, well, I know I'm going to be leaving. Maybe that conversation's happened. I know I'm leaving, so sod that, and you can understand it. Doesn't mean it's right, but you can understand it. There's always two sides to a story.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I think a lot of it stemmed as well from the penalty situation, Mitch. When you get it. A striker wants to score goals, and Wilson wanted to take the penalty, and Isak wanted to take the penalty. They're both 20-goal strikers. Do you know what I mean? They're both capable of doing it, and that you can understand that. But I think there's, we can read lots into things like that, can't we? And just want to reiterate what Stu said. We've never ever gone down that road of speculating. We've only ever given you fact on this channel. You've gone on. You're on mute, mate. You're on mute.
Again, he is back to Eddie Howe's level with communication. Oh, he's got a tight hamstring, then he's ill. Which is it? But the hamstring doesn't stop you using your gob to go on a podcast. And I bet he records his podcast with Michael Antonio. I bet that gets recorded. So I'm at the point where when I see the reaction from lads in the States or on one of the WhatsApp groups I'm on, some of them have taken time off work to join that and feel let down. That's poor show by everybody that they couldn't at least get a message from him. And that would have calmed everybody down. And people would still be unhappy, but yeah, okay. But now here we are left wondering and asking questions. As he sat in his bedroom with a serious case of self-doubt riddled with syphilis and listening to the best of Lana Del Rey's album and drinking absinthe. Is that what he's doing? We don't know. And that's the problem. We don't know. And he's gone missing at crucial times this season when there's been these question marks over, just what injury is. And the injuries change. Willock was a knee, then an ankle, then an Achilles, and then whatever else. And it that kind of lack of communication is leading to some of the frustrations that we're seeing. Yes, Stu's quite right. There's two sides to every story. If he knows he's on his way, could I be asked to do something? Well, you've got two choices. Are you a professional or are you selfish? And if you're selfish, you might want to walk away from it, and that's fine. But at least do it and seem like you're a professional and send a little message that says, I'm sorry, I'm really ill. I can't do an hour week today, lads. I want to concentrate. It would have taken a 30-second message, and that's what it takes. But that didn't happen. But then somebody within the club should be making sure that happens. And again, that's talking about turning around everybody in our football club and saying it is time to step up and improve what you are doing at every damn level.
You did that. Sean, he's asked a double-barreled question. He says, if we had Mourinho, Allegri, Flick, Conte or Tuchel, all three coaches, do you think we achieve success faster? He says, I'm 80% behind Howe, but to be outthought by Hague with that Man U really annoyed me. His second part of the question was, what would you lads be saying to Howe and Tyndall after Brighton Man U if it was your skin in the game? Two good questions there, Stu.
Well, the first part of the question, that will give us too many coaches and there'll be lots of confusion to the players. I presume he means just one of them.
I think he does, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, how many times are we going to discuss Mourinho? There's a lot of big name players, coaches, but a lot of these didn't want us. And I know I keep talking about progression and sentiment and stuff like that, but I believe anyhow, Jason Tyndall, Graham Jones, etc., have deserved the right. They've been through so much over the last 2.5 years to get us in this position where we're now on a springboard to success. This season is the key season, and I think they've deserved the right. I think someone else coming in now will be detrimental to the players with the work ethic they've got. And I think a lot of players are understanding. Some are near the end of their contract. It's not just Newcastle, it's happening at other clubs who've got nothing. Well, we have things to play for, but as you've got other players who are out of contract, you've got players who keep reading every single day or hearing every day that they're getting sold. For me, I agree with Tuna there. I'm 100% behind Eddie Howe and his team, and I expect them to advance. And he's going to have to be, the light he's got, you can only get you so far. You then need to bring the class in. And this is why I've been against the Ramsdale Pope scenario. And I understand it's great to have two keepers. That's great if you play in Football Manager and it's on a computer. But these are real people with both ambitions to be England's number one. So they can't be England's number one if you can't be Newcastle's number one. That was the point I was making. And then the next one there was Solanke. We don't need someone to replace Isaac. We need someone to either partner him or to play with him. And there was a question that was asked yesterday, has Howe played his best 11? I think the only time he's been able to do that this season was on the first game against Villa, with everyone being fit. But that seems like a long time ago, doesn't it, when we beat them 5-1. But what we have going forward is Trippier. He could be his form, his class, and he has been class for us. That could just drop off the face of a cliff. He wouldn't be the first footballer that's happened to. However, we potentially have the two best fullbacks, young fullbacks in the league. So going forward, Hall, I thought was outstanding again on Wednesday night. I think Livramento will be a fantastic player for us going forward. We need to just start getting players in who, like what Keegan did, sorry, Dave Kelly, sorry, Mick Quinn, I'm bringing these people in. Thanks for your service. Sorry, Gavin Peacock, you're not where you've done fantastic for us, but that's as far as you can get us. And this is the window for me that will tell us how long Eddie Howe's tenure at Newcastle United is going to be. If he buys right and he's willing to let people go who he's very fond of, then it shows that he's willing to make that advancement. If he still wants to cling on to certain people, which we don't need to mention, if he wants to cling on to certain people and not replace them with better quality, then I think he might not see next season out. And I want to be wrong with that. I want him to be Newcastle. I want him to build a dynasty here. I want him to be part of the growth, and I want our next trophy to be down to his manager acumen and his tactics, and him stand on the pitch watching whoever our captain is lifting that trophy. So that I'm 100% behind Eddie Howe regarding new players. That I honestly think we're going to get it right, and I think sometimes we speculate too much, and it's just going to get worse this summer, isn't it, with who's signing who and that player's coming. Long story to finish with a different answer to the question that wasn't asked. So I'll pass you on to Mitch.
What's your thoughts, Mitch?
I think it's finding a balance that we don't want to get into you've done when it's just a revolving door coaches scenario. We want to give people time. I think Eddie Howe has still deserved that time. What would I say to him if I skipped the game? I tell you what I'd say to him. What we saw from him ahead of the Man United game after we'd lost to them in the Carabao Cup final, in that documentary, when he showed a bit of anger. I've not seen enough of that from him. Now, that might still be happening behind those doors, but we're not seeing that. And I think I would like to see more of that. Because I think that ties in with a more ruthless Eddie Howe. Because I think it's up to him what he does with the work ethic he has, the intelligence he has, and the way he approaches everything. He needs to become ruthless, and that will then reflect in the team.
It's a balancing act as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
The ones he wants to keep will know it, and he needs to make sure that they feel important. And then there's going to be a big sell to the incoming players. This is how I see you fitting in. Apparently he's done that with Tosin, with Kelly, etc. And you've got to give footballers, because they're all pampered now. It's not just roll your sleeves and get on with it. They all need to have their ego stroked. They've got to feel part of it. And for man management, have we had a better man manager than Eddie Howe since Keegan?
No.
I don't think so. So I think this question mark's been levelled at him unfairly. I think he's capable of doing it. He just hasn't had the how do we say it? The tools to do it. You know, we've had a limited squad. If anything, this season's squad that's been on the pitch was of a lesser standard than last season, and we're still going into the last game with the potential of qualifying for Europe. So that, to me, is through as I talked on the Geordie's here, Geordie's there. We've had the 4 goals at home of Luton, the defeat of Forest at home, the meek surrenders at Everton and at Bournemouth and teams like that. Yeah, here we still are. And again, with really, really limited numbers. And any time that we've done well is when we've had quality on the bench to make changes. So let's bring the new extra quality in and see how far he can really take us. What I would be saying to Eddie, the second part of the question was, this is your time. We'll give you all the tools that you need to prove that you are as good as we want you to be, and as you think you can be. This is your season. Go and prove it. And I don't think anyone should be given a free pass to say, well, you're going to be here for the next 3 or 4 years, because that'll be dangerous. You need to have that bit of jeopardy in your job. You need to feel going into work, this could be your last day, your last week, your last month if you don't perform. And the ones who rise to that are the ones who are more successful. And he has to earn the right to being recognised as a Guardiola or a Klopp, all the other top managers that have been mentioned. But when the England job comes up, whose name's mentioned? When Guardiola goes, who do Man City fans think should be the next replacement for him? So he's thought highly of. And at the moment, he's ours. We just need to reassure him that he's the one that we want, and we're going to back him. And then he's a very intelligent man. He knows what football is like. Give him the tools. Let's see where we are this time next year, and I'm sure we'll be in a far better place where we are now.
All right, got some interesting questions coming through. David Smart says, do you think the offside line is correct? I tend to think now we've got the technology, it should be a semicircle arced from the goal line. It's interesting that, especially with the VAR conversation that we had as well. Eddie Howe said he only thinks VAR should be used for offside. So I've got the FA, the league, the Premier League, and everybody in football, FIFA, they've made things more difficult. The offside law used to be easy to explain. It's difficult to explain now, as is the handball rule, Mitch.
If I was to make a change to offside, the change I would make is ridiculously one. You added an additional line across the width of the pitch, halfway between the centre circle and the yard box, a bit like on a subliminal pitch. And up to that line, you cannot be offside. And beyond that line, you can be offside. And what you've also got then is an additional horizontal line across the pitch that helps people judge where they're at. You're not relying on the cut marks in the grass. You have something physical in place that everybody can see clearly. It also allows a little bit of leeway to a striker, but it doesn't allow them to goal hang. And I've suggested that for a long time as would be my change to offside, how the offside rule works. Personally, I would go back to, if you're offside, you're offside. Duffy had it right. If you're not interfering with play, what the hell are you doing on the pitch? And therefore, yes, it's frustrating when goals get disallowed because of what is seemingly innocent offside. But offside is offside. And everybody knows where they're at with that. It's not offside by an actual. It's not offside by somebody drawing wonky lines on a computer. Stick with a VAR. The automated VAR seems very promising and would take some of the controversy away. But that would be my tip.
What's your views on the offside rule, Stu?
The only thing in life about changes is going to happen, but I think there's just too many changes. The one World Cup where everything worked well was the one in Russia, when VAR was probably at its infancy, and they seemed to get every decision right, and there was no contest, and so all this debate, and I understand with Wolves putting up their abolish VAR, they've been hard done to at Old Trafford. So there's a list of teams, but imagine without VAR, it's going to happen again. Regarding the offsides, it should be as it was. We all understood it, as Mitch just said there. Apparently the rule was to be changed to favour the forward. It seems to be where they're trying to dissect it to prove the forward isn't onside, rather than that the defenders played him offside. We've all been victims of it. We've seen bad decisions at Old Trafford. We've seen one at Anfield last year with Isaac, who was about 3 inches taller than the player marking him, so his shadow was further from the floodlight that was nearer him. You know, so if that's how you're trying to gauge if someone's offside, to me, is proven they're trying to prove that someone's offside, and that's where the problem lies. It's who they're trying to favour. It's not the offsides. It's not the VAR. It is the people. That's been said repeatedly. But with the VAR technology, I think they're bringing the semi-automated in for next season anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that's it. It takes out the human error that they're trying to say. And if you're offside, you're offside. And there's been goals scored that have been given that were offside. There's been goals cancelled that weren't offside. That's football. That's the debate. That's what we enjoy. But when it's open to clear and obvious, as they call it, clear and obvious errors, there's not clear and obvious. What is clear and obvious is the attention that they're trying to give to help or favour certain teams. And without VAR, that for me would get worse because there's no recall. And how many, you can imagine next season, Sky Sports maybe not so much, but beIN Sports over here, my God, they'd be dissecting every single decision, saying if VAR was still in place, that would have been a goal. If VAR was in place, that would have been a red card. And we'd be crying for it again. So sometimes we've got to be careful what we wish for. What it needs is, it needs advancing. The people need educating who are using it, and common sense. And they have to be accountable for their own decisions instead of protected as they are. They need to be able to explain why they're making that decision, as they do in rugby. This is the decision we're coming to. This is the process. This is how we've got to it. Not where you can't criticise them, you can't question them, you can't challenge them, but they might issue an apology 2 or 3 days later. If you've got to look at a decision for 5 minutes, then it's not clear and obvious. So for me, the offside rule is getting fixed anyway. VAR doesn't need fixed. It's the education of people operating it that needs fixed.
Okay, I've got a question from Chippers yesterday, which I've just rediscovered. I struggled to find it, but I've screenshotted it and stuck it on my phone. Why has Riyadh Air not announced any routes for 2025 yet? Do you think they are targeting Newcastle as one of the routes, he says?
Yes, and that first one is not open yet. And second one, yes, of course, they'll be coming to Newcastle, but we need a bigger runway. I know Mitch has covered this many times on the Amigos. They want the A380s, which carries more people. The runway is not big enough to take that. Then we go to the NIMBYs. You can't do this. You can't build on that little bit of grass. That means absolutely nothing because it might affect a badger or not or something like that. That needs to be moved. Sorry for my callous interpretation of it, but we have to progress. You know, we can get a new house for the otter. We can move them upstream. We can find a badger, a new hole to burrow and stuff like that. There's so much that we can do. And sometimes we are our own worst victim. I mean, we're our own worst enemies. We create problems when there isn't problems. So RIA will cut to Newcastle once the airline's up and running. And this is why I think we're seeing an influx from Saudi Airlines investing in Newcastle, because we are a jewel in the crown over here in Saudi Arabia. They want to be associated with us, but that opens up another conversation regarding sponsorship. So I'll just answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, he's right what he says, Mitch, isn't it? There's not really much you can say to that.
But yeah, I mean, just take and wait for pan out. You know, we're talking with a genuine pain in its industry. Let's just let them get up. I think.
Yeah, good competition for Emirates, says Tuna. Gary says, I'd ask the question, do the fan base enjoy the style of football we are playing? Not the results necessarily. What's your thoughts on the style of football we play then, Stuart? It's a good question. I like a question when we haven't been asked it before.
Well, I can't answer the fan base. I can answer on behalf of
myself. Yeah, ask for your answer for yourself.
I understand the type of football he's trying to play. And I think if he had the numbers at his disposal, I think it is good. I think it's high energy, which is something that's been missing for the majority of the season. High energy, the pressing, and it's front foot football, and I like that. The crowd likes it. You can hear it when they're taking goal kicks. The opposition are taking goal kicks, and we're getting at them. It gives everyone a buzz and getting into tackles. The PSG game, we see Bruno, Gordon, Byrne all celebrating when they've won a good tackle. That's, for me, how football should be. Get in their faces, make them make the mistakes. Because if you've got the ball and all, you sit off them like they've done a lot of away games, like they did at Old Trafford. You sit off them and you give them time. You're playing top prime elite footballers, aren't you? The Premier League is full of elite footballers. But if you've got someone who's running at you, you have to make a decision quicker than you like to. You'll kick the ball. It creates errors, and that's what we need. That's the type of football Eddie Howe's trying to play, and I'm a huge admirer of it. I just don't think, especially in midfield this year, he's had the legs and the energy to do that for the majority of the season.
Yeah, I would agree with Dave as well, Mitch. He says, I don't think we've had the chance to implement his style because we've always got people out.
Yeah.
That's true. But I'll touch on something I talked about maybe through the week or even last weekend. We are lacking sometimes is when we are expected to make the running. When we are expected to be on the front foot. We're great hitting teams on the break. The high energy stuff and putting pressure on other teams is fabulous. But where we've let ourselves down a couple of times is when we should be able to then jump up a gear and get on the front foot and make the running more effectively, and we haven't been able to do that. So I think that's something maybe is where we need to learn to evolve the style of play that we have. But I've not heard anybody over here openly critical of the style of play. I think everybody over here, to my knowledge, seems reasonably comfortable with it.
Okay, Eddie's too loyal sometimes. We need to be ruthless this summer. We've got to bring the gap between the best and the worst in the squad way down. Waldo says, I'd like to see 3 at the back to release the young fullbacks. And Sean says, style of football is only good when you can change it on the flip of a coin. We lost games because of the no plan B. AC Milan comes to mind. Geordie Toomba Life says, we play like Liverpool did 2 to 3 years ago. High press, high energy, not too much technical football, more heavy metal. And I love it. And Way Man says, it's not Man City ball, but it's good when we've got the right people at the press. It's been missing in large parts this season due to injury. And Mark Byers, thank you. He says, more sensible talk an NUFC show on YouTube. Always complete rational sense, which is remarkable considering the panel. just kidding, fellas. Best show on NUFC Matters as well. Mark did ask a question earlier. He says, question, lads. If you see our chairman ringside tonight, what would you like to tell him or ask him?
Any chance of a pint?
Get your priorities right.
Yeah, exactly. No, I wouldn't. I don't think you could tell him anything, could you? Yeah, you could ask a question regarding. Well, in fact, I wouldn't even want to ask him anything. I would just like to say hello, and maybe even indulge in a bit of a selfie with him. I don't think with that type of person, he can be told what need to do. Any question that I would ask, he'd already have the answer to anyway, and I've got no problem with the vision that they have for Newcastle. Remember, and something Eddie Howe said in the press conference this week when he was asked, he used the phrase "number one." So while they were swinging golf clubs last week together, I think he might have been reminded of the vision from the chairman. We will be number one, and I think Mr. Howe is under no illusions of where the chairman expects this club to go and where he will take us. So for me, ask him a question, I would just. In fact, I've got a question I would ask him. Can we sign Kieran Tierney?
Oh God! Do not ask him that. I think, Mitch, we're all the same on here. I think we know how to go on. I think with age comes experience. And I think in many situations where we've been in the company, shall we say, of people who've been at the business end of Newcastle United, it's knowing how to behave in front of those kind of people and with those kind of people. There's a time and a place for everything, Mitch.
There is. I'd invite him to Dubai for a round of golf. And then I'd take him to watch the game in Dubai with the Dubai Mags. And I'd say to him, see what you've grown here. This is a microcosm of what you can grow around the world. And all you can do is push the button. And I think,
though, doesn't he?
Well, that's what he says.
don't mean going to watch the game with you. He wants to make us massive.
What he says. So, and if I genuinely don't know the ridiculousness that would take off if they managed to get to win something. What I'd try to get the that you've really got no idea how things are going to go. You talk about skyscrapers, skyrockets. That's where you got to.
That's a good question.
I've got
That's
a good question.
There's a good one from Barry asking why Mitch didn't get on the fans advisory board. It's a travesty.
Well, he's in a good mood today. Leave it. Leave it. I've got a question to ask the viewers in the panel. You know, we're living in this part of the world, visiting Riyadh, speaking to people. Even last night at that game, I was introduced. Oh, I'm a big Newcastle fan. People wanted to shake my hand because I support Newcastle. And there's a collective pride from people here that they've got a foothold in the Premier League, and we should be grateful that it's us. The question I'd like to ask is, you know, I see a lot of, and hear a lot of complaints about tourist fans. I was a tourist fan last night. Didn't have the phone on during the game, but before the game, took the video which you put on. The people get annoyed with tourist fans coming in. It's part of the growth. What annoys me more, so I'm going to give an A, is it the tourist fan that annoys you more? Or B, is it the middle classes that used to look down on the working classes supporting Newcastle? And now it seems to be their right. Because me, when I go to the game, I want to see fans like who me and Mitch are going to meet straight after this, I'll believe. I want to see fans like that who have an excitement about supporting Newcastle, and they do the research and the study the club, and they want to come and visit it and experience it and everything else. I'd rather be sitting next to someone like that than someone who shouts, Bruno, Bruno. His name's Bruno, and that's it. So that's the question I ask you. Who would you rather have sit next to you at the match? Someone from Saudi Arabia who's taking great pride in their public investment fund acquiring us and want to make us better, or someone who thinks you're a piece of on their shoe and thinks you're a ruffian, etc., but now believes that they've got more right to go to a match than you because they speak posh? That's my answer. Sorry to get off your chest. I just thought I'd ask that question. See what the viewers think.
Yeah, I just want somebody who's going to support the club through thick and thin. I don't want a fair weather fan. I don't want someone getting up like the guy in front of us who has done on more than one occasion this season and leave with half an hour to go because he's not happy about what he sees. And it's one of them, isn't it? It's one of them. It's subjective. With you pay your money, you take your chance, and that's it. But I hit me 40th year yesterday. 40 years actually going to games yesterday and that's a milestone really. And I've still not seen us win anything. And there'll be plenty of viewers in the chat, as we know, who've gone a hell of a lot longer than me and haven't seen us win anything. So it's I just want people who support the club, Mitch. That's all I want. People who are willing to back them through thick and thin, and remember that at Newcastle, for the longevity of my supporting days, it's always been very, very, very thin.
Yep. And as a fan base, this is part of our learning experience. Learning to embrace everybody and welcome everybody, whether it's one match or 100 matches. There has, in my opinion, been a drive from some individuals with support of other individuals who have vested interest in the gentrification of the fan base, which takes away some of the club community synergy. Want to replace it with personal gain and the virtue signal about helping the food bank and this, that, and the other. And it's not right. I don't think it'll ever be the soul of Newcastle United. It's certainly not the soul of Newcastle United that I grew up with and know. But equally, Newcastle United has to change. We can't be forever parochial. Because it'll never just be the biggest club in Europe. And if we want to expand and grow, we have to be as welcoming as we can, understanding and educational, get people to know the club, its soul and its spirit that we all possess a little bit of. There's a light that never goes out and all that. When I hear that song, even now and again out here, it takes me straight back to St James Park, because my light never goes out. And that's, for me, what it's all about.
So that's the point I was making. I was playing devil's advocate. Everyone should be welcome. And the whole idea of some are better than others is annoying. So that's why I asked it, to see what sort of reaction that would come in. You know, that if someone, I don't know, let's say RGS educated, wants to support Newcastle, they've made that choice. Just because they didn't support them 10 years ago doesn't mean they can't support them now. It brings money into the club, which helps us become more successful. It is the price on the ticket, just the same as if someone from another part of the world, whether that be Australia, whether that be Japan, whether that be from America last year, whether it be from possibly South Africa next year, wherever we decide to go, we will create new fans. And the one common thing that should unite us all is we want a successful Newcastle United. So that's why I asked. It was no one's better than anyone else. No one's got a, unless you've got a season tickets, the rest is up for debate, and there shouldn't be preferential treatment to anybody. But unfortunately, the way football is going, it is commercially driven. And if someone's willing to pay, the ticket I had last night would have cost nearly £800. £800. That's, hopefully it doesn't come out. But that's what got me thinking last night. The fact that I was able to be sitting in that stadium, in that seat, for one of the biggest games on the calendar in the league here. What happens if that becomes the norm at Newcastle? Then it's whoever's got the most money gets to go to the games. And this is where it becomes a problem, especially on Tyne side, because the people who have been going to the game for a long time, I'm getting into socio-economic factors here, which I shouldn't be going down. It opens a different debate. But this is why there is a need for a bigger stadium. And for people to say, oh, this sounds entitled, this is what we need. Unless we do exactly what Mitch said, we'll just remain the biggest club in Newcastle. If we want to compete in the global stage, it has to be everyone is welcome. And everyone who wants to come, yeah, there'll be different learning curves. There'll be people that we seen in Dortmund that didn't know what colour Newcastle were playing in, you know, and they had tickets. Yet 2 hours before that, we were sitting with who I would call proper fans, who had travelled the length and breadth of the country, done the hard yards, just went to Dortmund because Newcastle were playing, and it was a trip to say they were in Dortmund, knowing that they couldn't get a ticket. So this is the reality, and there isn't a correct answer, but a bigger stadium would help pacify some of that. That was the long way of getting back to what I was wanting to say, because some people saying these shouldn't go and these shouldn't be welcome. Without either, we're not going to get the money put in the club that we need.
Steve Hazy says, never forget your roots, son, said us, and that's what the club needs to remember. You can change, but you never forget and never leave anyone behind. Okay, the prediction for the fight tonight, then. I'm going 8th round for a stoppage for Tyson Fury. You can't predict 3-1, Stu, and Mitch can't roll the dice. So, Stu, what's your prediction for tonight?
I'm going to shock you, Steve. I said to Mitch at the start of the week, and I've actually put it on the bet predictor that Turkey Al Sheikh's put on there to win $100,000. I predicted Tyson Fury round 8.
Round 8. Wow. Okay. And what about you, Mitch?
22-1.
And on the same predictor, and Fury 6.
Fury 6. Okay. Enjoy the night, lads. Say hi to Al Walid for me. I'll be keeping an eye out for you on the telly. That's the end of the professionals. We're back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. Those were the days with George, and then the fans forum is back at 6 o'clock on Monday. Enjoy the Brentford game, and I will see you tomorrow night. Take care, lads.
3-1 to Brentford, 3-1 to Newcastle tomorrow. That's the main thing. Last game of the season, 20 quid on it. Let's have it.
Enjoy the boxing. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Shut up.